This video is not only about how to use an LLC and insurance to protect your real estate assets from lawsuits, but more importantly, how to limit the chances of getting sued in the first place. Most of the reasons a tenant would sue you is because you did something obviously wrong that violated the law or the lease, like wrongfully evicting them, security deposit disputes, breach of quiet enjoyment, or unlivable conditions. These are all easily avoided with proper maintenance responses, not keeping the security deposit for wear and tear, notifying before entry, and following the lease. But even if you completely follow all the rules of being a landlord, you could still find yourself involved in a lawsuit if someone just simply got hurt on your property. This could not even be the tenant. This could be someone that the tenant invited over, or a complete stranger to you and the tenant. You could be held liable for someone's injury if they fell down the stairs, or even if they fell because of a hole or crack in your driveway. You could potentially be ordered to pay hundreds of thousands of dollars for something that you weren't even aware of or purposely neglected. But just because someone got hurt on your property obviously doesn't make you automatically at fault. They still need to prove that the reason they got hurt was because of the property owner's negligence. For example, if your tenant was coming home one day and they fell through one of the stairs on the porch, causing them to break their ankle, the judge could find you liable if the tenant had made you aware that the steps were unstable or dry rotted and you still hadn't gotten them repaired. You could even be held liable if the tenant doesn't file a request about the steps, but suggests to the court that you don't do any routine maintenance to keep the property safe for them, potentially forcing you to pay for the tenant's medical bills and wages if it caused them to miss time at work. So the best way to protect yourself from these slip and fall lawsuits is to conduct frequent property inspections. These inspections need to be well documented with pictures and timestamps. And if any defects are found, they need to be repaired as quick as possible. This way, if you ever find yourself in this situation, you will have documentation from the most recent inspection that the steps were considered safe by a licensed home inspector. So as long as the tenant didn't file a maintenance request that went unanswered, you will be able to prove you are not neglecting your properties or the safety of your tenants. If you fix maintenance requests quickly and conduct routine property inspections, you shouldn't ever find yourself at fault for landlord negligence. But that doesn't mean things still can't happen outside of your control. That's why many real estate investors hold their properties inside of an LLC. LLC stands for Limited Liability Company, and its main purpose is to separate your business assets from your personal assets. This way, if you are ever sued, in most cases, you can only be sued for the equity you have inside of the LLC. They cannot come after your personal assets or any assets outside of the LLC, because technically the LLC owns the asset and not you. However, there are some situations, like an excess amount of fraud, when the court can decide to come after the personal assets of the LLC owners. This is known as piercing the corporate veil. Many real estate investors will put each property they own into separate LLCs. That way, if something goes wrong at one of the properties, the courts can only come after that LLC and all the other properties are safe. But this method does require a lot of extra bookkeeping because all LLCs come with their own paperwork. You will need to keep track of every LLC's income and expenses and file taxes separately for each one. It is also very important to not mix funds for different LLCs to keep them organized. Some investors find it worth it to do it this way for the protection, and others will maybe own 40 properties and have 4 different LLCs with 10 properties in each. That way their equity is still spread out, but is not as much bookkeeping to keep up with. If you decide to do it that way, it's important to not have too much equity in one single LLC. So if you have 40 properties and 8 are paid off, it's a good idea to not keep all 8 in the same LLC. Because if something happens, you could potentially be sued for all the equity inside the LLC. Spread out the equity as evenly as you can to protect yourself, especially once your properties are paid off, because it's a lot easier to move them into different LLCs. The reason for that is because you are not able to get a conventional investment property loan under an LLC name. That's because government-backed loans like Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae make their loans for citizens, not companies. So there are 2 main kinds of long-term 30-year fixed loans you can get for investment properties: conventional government-backed investment loans and DSCR loans. Conventional loans approve you on your personal income and credit. DSCR loans are non-conforming loans that approve you based on the potential income of the property. So if you are able to qualify for a conventional loan, it's always better because the lender fees are lower and the interest rates are generally about 1% lower than DSCR rates. If you want to buy a property under an LLC using a DSCR loan, it's no problem. But if you want to use a conventional loan, that's where you'll have issues. Many investors will try to buy properties under their personal name using a conventional loan, then transfer the property into their LLC name to get the protection. But this has a risk because almost all loans will have due on sale clauses, meaning the lender will have the option to call the remaining balance of the loan due anytime after you move the property out of your name into a company's name. So what I would recommend is, if you can qualify using conventional loans, is to buy your first few properties under your personal name. Even if you have an extremely large large income with great credit, the maximum amount of conventional loans you can get is capped at 10. Once you can no longer qualify for conventional loans, use DSCR loans and buy them under an LLC name. Then once those first properties are paid off, you can transfer them into your LLCs without having to worry about the loan being called due. But while those properties are in your personal name, you need to be very well insured. Which brings me to the third way to protect yourself from a lawsuit, having great insurance. There are two types of insurance you should have investing in real estate. The first is landlord insurance. This should include property damage coverage, loss of rental income due to inhabitability, and liability protection. The property damage will cover you for damage that might happen to your property from bad weather or fire. The loss of rental income will cover you if, for example, a tree falls on your house and the tenant cannot live in the property for 2 months. You will still be paid your rent check for those 2 months by the insurance company. The liability coverage will kick in if a tenant sues you for injury to help pay for your legal defense and potential judgments made against you. You should also require in your lease that the tenant will obtain renter's insurance for their own belongings. But these are all only up to a certain amount limit that's set in your policy. And as many people know, you can sue someone for any amount you want to. For that reason, you should also have an umbrella insurance policy on top of your landlord insurance, especially if you own properties in your personal name. An umbrella insurance policy is a kind of coverage extension that is on top of the foundational insurance policies, providing additional coverage if your first liability coverage isn't enough for a particular payment. For example, if your tenant gets hurt on your property, sues you for $1 million and wins, if your landlord liability insurance has a $500,000 limit to their payout, your umbrella insurance policy will kick in and cover the remaining $500,000 so you don't have to pay it. If you own properties in your personal name, you will have different landlord liability insurance coverage for each property. But you only need one umbrella insurance policy for that added cushion that will kick in across your entire portfolio. You should also have a different umbrella insurance policy for each one of your LLCs for that added cushion to your equity. Because you are not able to use an umbrella insurance policy under your personal name if something happens at one of your properties under an LLC name. Or if something happens at one of your properties in an LLC, you cannot use the umbrella policy that's covering a different LLC. Now, umbrella insurance policies do have limits as well. They are usually sold from $1 to $5 million limits. So buy the coverage you think is appropriate compared to your equity and net worth. Most attorneys are not going to go after someone for $2 million if they only have $50,000 in the bank and own two $300,000 properties with 30% equity in each. So if you have strong landlord insurance with an umbrella policy over top of you, even if you lose a lawsuit in the worst case scenario, you should only have to pay your regular insurance premiums. So this is the final video in this series. I hope I've addressed all your main concerns about real estate investing and you feel more confident buying your next property. Here's a link to the first 2 parts of this video, and if you need help buying, selling, or investing in real estate, my information will be in the description.